For autism during the last month. I think the whole country was turning blue, 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 blue everywhere. So we have to thank the lady who has been doing tremendous efforts for turning all the country blue. So really, really powerful. I was so impressed. So let us introduce Ms. Dalia Soliman. She's the founder of the Egyptian Autistic Society and educational psychologist, co-founder of Qudraat Association. Please help me welcome.
Thank you for the lovely introduction. Okay, today I've decided that, of course, I'm going to speak about autism, but I wanted to speak more about real-life in-class practices of mainstreaming. We're talking about the challenges met in real mainstreaming of children with autism in Egypt. I'm not going to go into what is autism because I'm sure you all know by now and you're overdosed probably, but we're going to just say that there's a triad of impairments. Children with autism have to suffer from poor social skills, poor communication skills, and poor imagination, which is displayed to us as behavior. What are the consequences of this triad on school? How does this affect the process of mainstreaming? Of course, it's going to not help them make friends or keep friends. They're not going to be able to respond to verbal praise or any verbal cues. They have difficulties understanding the views of other people's needs, and a need to control every single social situation. They have very restricted interests and the need for routine. Their sensory world, processing, makes it very hard for them to make sense of the world. Problems with the less structured times of the day, of the school day, and I'll talk more about what we can do at lunchtimes and break times, and difficulties with the use of social language. How do the restrictive interests and need for routine affect them in school? They have problems with change. So can you imagine how many things in the school day are likely to change? If a teacher is absent, this will affect them. If the break is 5 minutes delayed, it will slightly affect them. At the Egyptian Autistic Society, every day at 1:50 p.m., all the kids start holding their bags. If we're 5 minutes late, they start crying, head banging, biting. They have a very powerful internal clock. Difficulties with generalizing information, we're going to talk about this in a minute. Difficulties with being motivated, because sometimes in the classroom, if a child is motivated using a trampoline and the teacher is trying to teach a science lesson, it's very hard to meet their needs. And reluctance to try new activities. The sensory sensitivities will lead to a lot of things. They will find it very difficult to move around the busy corridor. I want to give you an example of something that happened a few years back. We have been since 2007 mainstreaming most of our autistic children at New Horizon. And one of the children, while he was going up the stairs, the buzzer rang really loud. He was supposed to go to the library. And the buzzer was so annoying to him that he refused to go to that floor where the library was for the rest of the year. And every time he was going up the stairs, he would shake. But because the principal of the school, Ms. Aisha Wasif, was so understanding, she actually changed the whole buzzer system of the school. So I do agree with Dr. Dalia and Dr. Hela what they were saying before, that mainstreaming really depends on the attitude of the principal of the school. The sensory issues may make them avoid the playground, make them avoid important areas, noisy areas such as the canteen. They'll be very anxious about lining up and doing a lot of things that are required, basic requirements in schools. And they'll be easily distracted from noise, lighting, smells, textures. If you're not familiar with the kind of sensory problems that autistic children have, they can get very, very excited to the extent that they feel all the clothes on them are like pins and needles. I had an autistic boy who broke his arm and felt the pain 2 weeks later. So to that extent, the sensory problems are severe. I'm not going to talk a lot about the inclusion laws in Egypt. I'm just going to address the areas that affect us. It is said that 10% of schools should have inclusion and that there should be 4 children per class. As we all know, this is not happening. The minimum IQ accepted was 52, is now 65. I'm not going to go into this again, but we have a huge problem with the Ministry of Health, the health insurance, and the assessments they're using to assess IQ tests for autistic children, because they're underestimating their intelligence and therefore not giving them the right to inclusion. They are using verbal tests, and with autistic children you should be using non-verbal tests. The law also states that a child has the right to have a shadow teacher in class and in tests. What actually happens in comparison? This is a report by one of the mothers. Let me read it for you. As a mom, the Ta'min al-Sahi is a horrible place with lots of distraction. The IQ test is unfair. The person in charge doesn't know how to deal with autistics. They can be easily distracted and they are visual. She keeps asking lots of questions, fast and verbally. When she starts the visual part, he did all that she wanted correct. But she didn't believe him. She thought he memorized the exam from before. She can't understand the visual part is their strong part. So she gave him a less mark due to her perception, not the result. Then we have to do the mainstreaming papers at the mainstreaming department at the Ministry of Education. The place is worse than is a backyard that's filthy and dirty with more than 50 children with their mothers and no place to sit. There's destruction everywhere. So they're actually, this paperwork is done in a field, in an open field. The person in charge is not qualified at all. She keeps on repeating the same question even after the child answers. Many procedures and stamps and signatures, and the children are actually dragged up the stairs and down the stairs to get all this paperwork done, and they have to go. The children have to leave their schools for the second time to go to be mistreated as if it is not a right and that they learn, and to become educated and included correctly. So this was one of the reports of the mothers, and similar, I don't think there is a single mother who has had a positive experience either with the Ta'min al-Sahi or with the paperwork of the mainstream department of education. The reports about from the shadow teachers about mainstreaming schools. We are currently mainstreaming in 4 different schools. I'm going to read this to you in Arabic, but basically actually I'll just tell you what it says. Teachers need some sort of curriculum or condensed curriculum in advance so that they can be able to prepare the children. They need to be able to know what kind of help they're allowed to give the children. All these things are unclear. So there's a lot of laws saying, okay, go ahead and mainstream, but there's no protocol or system to say how the school should do it. And this is what Mrs. Aisha Wasif and I are currently working on. They need to be children, our children, autistic children do not have imagination. Until it is developed, we need them to memorize things, and then we rely on implicit learning for them to be able to gain some imagination. So we need in advance the kind of things that they need to write about. For example, if they're asked to write a story about, imagine what happens if you're standing in a supermarket and a lion is standing behind you. To them, this is impossible. To any other child, this is a lot of fun. So these are the things we need to know in advance from the curriculum so that we can start training them slowly to do. And we actually train them using different methods completely, things like role play and drama. Some children in mainstream schools are asked to sit in different areas. So they are mainstream in the class, but they're asked to sit either on the back of the class or on a certain table altogether. So in the classroom, there's not a lot of actual mixing with the other students. And if they're sitting at the back, this affects them because they're easily distracted. Some of the teachers do not know how to deal with autistic children and do not want to deal with autistic children. They feel that it's an extra burden. And some who do know or who do want to work with them are not very qualified. The children do not attend all the sessions, all the lessons, yet they're required to examine all of them. So they might not find a science lesson in their schedule because they only go a few hours a week. Then again, they are required to take the exam at the end of the year. And the mainstreaming has, the Ministry of Education for the mainstreaming has required that most tests be multiple choice. Where this is quite comfortable for autistic children in the sense that there's not a lot of written expression and it helps them, this is not applied in most subjects, only the Arabic subjects. So what are the challenges of inclusion that we see? To sum up, curriculums are not modified to adapt to the children. The entry exams are not correctly tailored, so it's actually very difficult to get an autistic child into the school because the entry exams are very difficult. Not all schools have a support unit. Most schools don't allow the shadow teacher. They think, okay, we'll take him and we'll mainstream him. They have no clue what to do with him. The classroom environment is not set up in a friendly way that will assist or reflect the child's needs. Teachers may not have training, as we said, and the time given to complete tasks is insufficient. Accommodations, such as giving the children extra time and somebody to read the questions for them in exams or in the class is not always available. Sometimes parents of neurotypical children might not be very accepting of the presence of ASD children in the classroom, which is what Dr. Nati spoke about. Now I'm going to talk about the program that we're running with New Horizons School, because this is going to be a case study and it's actually, I'm proud of it. This was actually just before, this was in a Bashir school. Can somebody point out which one is the autistic child? I'll give you a bracelet. Which one? No. Well, that's all I wanted, that you can't point him out, exactly. So this is him in the prayer room, this is him in the music room. He's Khaled, he's the one in the middle, if you can see him, and the one on the right. And this is him with his shadow teacher learning to order from the canteen. These are children that are currently at New Horizons School. The first couple of years, we wouldn't even have dreamed of having them participate in a school play or in a school, any kind of entertainment. This year, for the past 2 years actually, they go up on stage and they do everything required of them. And I can't tell you how the parents feel. This is a video we took, actually, the school took for us a few days ago, of our children at the playground socializing with other kids. I don't think you can hear, but she's basically just making him spell out phonetically. So this is Hassan, the one in the gray sweatshirt. The one trying to get the ball is Nadim. He has it now. I've had Nadim for maybe 8 years. I've never seen him play soccer. I didn't even know he could do this. As you can see, his shadow teacher is helping. Still hand flapping. Okay. In 2002, I did my master's in Birmingham, and my thesis was based on the mainstreaming of autistic children in Egypt. And I think it's very interesting to compare to the results that we saw right now. When we asked the teachers in the school, what did you think about, was there an improvement in the social skills of the autistic children? Most of them said yes in parallel play. A few said yes, they were involved with peers, and very few said no improvement whatsoever. The children's reactions to children with autism was also quite positive. Most of them asked questions. A lot of them wanted to be friends. Some helped, and this is very normal, that a lot of children like to be the helper, and this is why we introduced the buddy system. And nobody actually ignored. Very few ignored. And when we asked the teachers, do you feel that the other peers benefited from having them in the class? Most of them said yes. The interesting one was the reaction of the parents. Most of them didn't even return the survey and could not care less. But those who did, the majority gave us a negative comment, not a positive comment. And that was in 2002. Okay. Now we're trying to compare ourselves with the best practice. Okay, so let's have a look at the laws in the US. So there's definitely a rise in the movement of inclusion. The idea, which is the Individuals with Disability Education Act, was passed in 1975 and then reformed in 2004. States it gives every child the right to early intervention services and special education, and it gives the parents a very important proactive role. It says that every school has to provide a free and appropriate public education. The word appropriate is where the parents and the school differ, because what the parents might find appropriate is different to what the schools find appropriate. So in the early intervention services, which is given up until the age of 3, all the children are supposed to be in the least restrictive environment. Usually at this age, up until the age of 3, it's usually done actually in the homes or in the nurseries. So it allows children to interact with other students who don't have disabilities if it's in the nurseries in the least restrictive environment. Certain modifications are permitted, so they are allowed to take an LSA, a learning support assistant, which we call shadow teacher here. And this goes for children with physical and mental disabilities under the age of 3. It mainly focuses on overall development. Services might include speech therapy, psychomotor therapy, applied behavior analysis, and parents receive a lot of training in the house as well. This is compared to the special education services which they get after the age of 3, and this is mainly given by the school. It's provided by the school district, and each child is given an IEP, which is an individual education plan, to meet his needs. Again, all of this is government funded. What are the keys for successful inclusion? We need to understand that an autistic child is governed by his anxiety. Okay, so changing the position, and this anxiety comes from a lack of predictability. So if you change the position of furniture in the class, to him this could be a different room. If you change the sequence of giving him the task, this may be a different activity altogether. Changing the color of the equipment or using different flashcards may make him feel that this is not a task or something to learn. So if I'm using ABCs, using these particular flashcards, and the next day I try and use a different set of flashcards, he may not respond. And he may genuinely think that he doesn't know how to respond. To the extent that if he's learned a certain technique in one subject, or in one lesson, or by one teacher, he will not generalize it to the other subject, teacher, or room. The sensory problems makes it very difficult to concentrate, and there's a difficulty in predicting what others are going to do or behave, how they behave and why they behave this way. So we need a whole school approach, basically. The whole school approach is that it needs to be in the school policy. The school has to be committed to inclusion. If the principal of the school truly believes in inclusion, she will make it's spread out. It's a ripple effect throughout the school. Awareness of the autistic spectrum disorders. So we need staff training, we need clarification of roles, we need to know who to go to when something happens. And we need to designate for each child a special needs coordinator to work with the parents on his program. How do we prepare the child for school? So I know that the child is starting in September, a new school. So starting the summer, I introduce the young person to this new environment and the key people. So I take him for short visits to the school's campus. When we were doing the protocol for AUC, for the boy, Amr, who was supposed to attend in September, this was our plan. That throughout the summer, we were going to bring him several times, walk him around campus, get to know the canteen where the bathrooms are. So we also need to provide a plan and photos, something visual for the child about the key areas in the school. Have him practice navigation around the school. Visiting at different times of the day, because if he's used to coming at 10 o'clock when it's really empty, and then the next day he comes at 3 p.m. when it's really, really busy, to him this could be a different place. All the sensory problems are going to kick in, and it's going to be very difficult. So we have to have all this in mind when preparing. Staff from the old school are requested to go to the new school because they will be able to easily spot out the triggers that are going to upset this child. So then again, we can put this in the program of preparation. We need to prepare and plan all the resources we're going to need. Because they are such structured and routine-oriented people, we need to be the same in the beginning until we can break the routine and give them some coping strategies. So we need a lot of preparation and a lot of planning. We need to plan what is going to happen in less structured times, for example, break times. We need to be able to have somewhere where the child, if he's having a meltdown, can go and sit like a cozy corner somewhere in the school. A quiet working area where he can sit with his shadow teacher and work, because for some reason today he just cannot cope with being in the classroom with the whole group. So we need also a venue for teaching social skills in a small group. So for example, as you know, one of the main issues with children with autism is they have a social deficit. So I can have a 14-year-old who still wants to play with cars on the floor. So what we do is we go and find out what do the other 14-year-olds play with, and we take him to a corner, and we sit and we do a structured play session, and we teach him this. So for example, if all the other 6-year-olds are currently collecting stickers of football players, then we get him into it in a one-to-one situation, because we're trying to bridge the gap between him and his peers. And he also needs to know exactly where his belongings are. So if this is his locker, we can put, for example, a picture of him on his locker with all his belongings. The same applies when you're organizing the classroom and defining his personal space. Many young people with autism do much better in a very highly set classroom. Again, even at home, they say that the old-fashioned houses where you had a separate dining room and a separate kitchen and a separate living room was very clear to an autistic child, because if you're speaking to him and he's stressed, he will not understand, but the visual does not disappear, it's always there. So if you sit him on the dining table, then it's time to eat. If you put him in the kitchen, then it's time to cook or do something the same. If he's in the living room, then it's probably TV time or family time. So the same with the classrooms. Predictability, yes. So everything has to be very clearly defined, very visual, to give them predictability. They have to know in advance what is expected of them and where they are going. The young person's place can be identified by a map or a card placed on the desk to identify his seat. So on his table and his chair, you can put something, even if it's just his jacket. Different children need different levels of structure. So somebody might need his picture and his name. Another person might just need, even his little coat or something. And again, a one-to-one corner in the class if needed. At the society, what we do is we mark the things by, if the children are sitting on the small tables, that means it's one-to-one time. If they're sitting on the big round table, that means it's group time or eating time. If they're sitting on the mat, that means it's free play. They can do whatever they want, including their stereotypical behaviors, because this is your time. So we're basically communicating with them using the geography of the class. So equipment should be clearly labeled and kept in the same place, which should also be labeled. So this should be labeled scissors, and the scissors should be kept in the drawer that says scissors and other things. Introduction to any new place has to be gradual. So for example, if you are about to introduce them in a campus like this, every time you move, you cannot do everything at the same time, because there has to be a process of systematic sensitization where he deals with and accepts all these changes slowly. Accommodations can be made. So for example, if I know that the canteen is going to be very busy at 3 o'clock and this is lunchtime at school, I can let him go at 2:45. So he goes and he adjusts before the other children come in. These tiny little accommodations make a huge difference in his anxiety level and therefore in his behavior. The timetable has to be color-coded for different subjects. The teacher's names are written in full. The times, if you can't understand the concept of time, has to be done with clock faces, rooms numbered. The daily routine, we use basically visual schedules for everything. The child needs to know where he's going because, again, when he's stressed, even if he understands verbal language, if you tell him today you have math and then science and then English, at the time where he's stressed, all this language has disappeared. But if he has a picture, schedule that is with a picture or it's written down, a visual, when he's stressed he can use it and this is going to remind him exactly where he has to be. Break times, we need to plan in advance. Where do the other children spend their breaks? Is there queuing for lunch? Does he know how to queue up? Are there any clubs that he can join in? Where will he go if he loses his lunch money? So you actually have to predict in advance the problems that can happen and prepare him for it. Is there a refugee area? The social issues, and this is something that we were talking about. What is the school's policy generally on bullying? Which member of staff is responsible for bullying? So if he is being bullied by students or by teachers, we need to know in advance who he has to go to. Can I email his special needs coordinator? Are these young people encouraged to join in the after-school activities or not? Management of behavior, because we will have behavior issues. We use, again, the visual system because that reduces anxiety and improves behavior. We try, and again, by using rules and visual systems, it's like you're separating yourself. You are not telling the child, you cannot do this. Once it's written down, it's a rule. And the child accepts objective rules better than he accepts them from a person. So having objective rules written down helps a lot. Treating each day as a fresh start, because their tolerance level varies. And understanding that the traditional behavioral methods will not be used. We need to have a personal relationship-based approach with these children. The teaching style, which is very, very difficult to explain to shadow teachers here, is you need to use your intuition. There are a lot of schools of thought, but at the end of the day, each child has a different entrance point. You need to be creative. You need to see how to be able to reach this child. Can you teach this child through singing, through working on the playground, through a piano? Each child has a different entrance point, and you need to have this intuition. And remember, if the strategy you use the first time doesn't work, with time it might be accepted. And again, varying and modifying the targets according to his level of arousal is acceptable. Maximize the experiences of success to increase his self-confidence. Allow him choices in the order of activities and avoid negativities. If you say what not to do, they may choose to do it. And this is typical attention-seeking behavior of autistic children. So just ignore the negative behavior. I have a child that I have to sit with when we're doing a session, and I need to have with me like 20 pencils, because I guarantee the second you sit down, he holds the pencil, he's going to break it. He wants to waste 5 minutes of sharpening the pencil, and he's saying, don't break the pencil. So now he just thinks I'm abnormal. I give him the pencil, we continue. I give him the pencil, we continue. Group work. Repeat the instructions for the individuals or in small groups. So if the teacher is telling them, please open your book to page 3, you need to be able to tell them, open it to page 3 or write it down, because it's easier to get from proximal instructions rather than group ones. Use an agreed signal that is arranged between both of you that he's not alert. So for example, to alert him that he's not concentrating or attending. So if you know that he's drifting off, you can say have an arranged signal that says like, back to focus. Again, use written and visual cues. Communication, ignore all the inappropriate talk, because there's a lot of thinking aloud. So when we're teaching an autistic child how to do addition, he will say, I put 3 in my head, and then 5 on my fingers, and he actually repeats what he was taught. So you have to ignore this in the beginning, or give him again a visual cue which says, shh, I can hear you. And reward the non-interruption. Rules. Children find it very difficult, autistic children and neurotypical children at a very young age, with what is a black line, what is a white line, what is a gray shaded area. These are very difficult for them to understand because they're very literal children. So what rules can be bent and what cannot? So running into the street should not be bent. You can eat, don't eat before lunch, your snack, this can be bent. But for an autistic child, these are all rules and they must be followed. refusing to work. You need to make sure that your instructions are literal and concise. See if you can break down the task into smaller bits. See if he has all his equipment. See if there's anything distracting in the environment. And reinforce all the verbal instruction, again, with visual instruction. How do you handle it? You use a positive approach. We do not punish. We use positive. Work towards positivity. You model the required behavior. You can negotiate. It's okay. You can say, okay, how about you use a pink pen for this? Other common problems are calling out and making inappropriate noises, obsessional behavior, temper tantrums, running out of class, transitioning is very difficult, and social skills again. What are the problems met in the UK and the USA? Education is funded by the government. It is cheaper for the government to put these children in mainstream schools. Therefore, children do not always receive the appropriate amount of therapy that is required. I actually had a family who moved to the UK, and the local education authority said, oh, it's absolutely fine going to mainstream school. And the father called and begged me to give him a tougher diagnosis, a more severe diagnosis, so that he could access more help. And private centers are, of course, very expensive. To sum up, use consistent classroom routines, give visual instructions, watch out for signs of anxiety, understand that there are problems in the need of transition. Structure of the classroom is very important. Explain the purpose of all the assignments and make use of any special interests. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? So is Dalia?
Yes?
Yes, really.
Yes, for sure. Best practice. Yes. Anyone else? Yes.
Can you use these recommendations and structures to students suffering from bipolarity or class?
Yes, any child needs structure. All children do very well with structure. Yes. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
And at the same time,
The question from the story, please.
okay.
21-year-old Asperger
Yes.
would like to be an engineer. Yes.
Yes. Would you encourage him, even though you know that he's really very limited in his way, you know, but
Why? What's he limited in? I would definitely encourage. I mean, this is my final answer. What is he limited in?
He's great. He cannot, besides, you know, he's not having very high IQ. He just little kind of limited, but this is what he wanted to do because he's comparing himself to his brother.
Well, I mean, is this really what he wants to do, or is he comparing himself? Does his brother want to be an engineer too?
He is an engineer.
So maybe you need to find his true passion. Because if he's not getting great grades, then I don't think it's giving him the satisfaction that he wants. You need to find his true passion. But if not, you can direct it with something similar.
Okay, so you don't encourage him?
No, I encourage him to follow his passion no matter what it is. For sure. Because this is what he will excel in.
Even though from his behavior, from his grades,
you would be surprised. I would not go for traditional methods. I would not focus on him trying to be an engineer through university to this. I would see some computer programs. Maybe he can do designs on computer. So you can do the same engineering concept, but using maybe he's probably got very strong computer skills, right?
Yeah.
So this is what I would use.
Thank you.
I want to assure and add most of the rules and the comments you said is applicable for other intellectual disabilities. It was a great presentation and fruitful. It's not need half an hour, it's need more.
I can go on
And
forever.
all of us need more, maybe a day, a full day, because all of us need to know more, the academic people and the mothers and all the other intellectuals. I need and support the AUC to make another session for the inclusion in education, pure inclusion in education. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank you very much, very informative. I would like to make a recommendation, and I know you probably support it, that we go for the word support teacher and not shadow.
Yes.
Because it's very misleading, because the shadow will be 24/7 on top of the kid, and I don't think, that, I mean, that's the connotation. So if you use support, I use support whenever I need it, and it is weaned when I don't. So that was just my recommendation.
Two things. Number one, Dr. Hella, when I was doing my master's in Birmingham in 2002, the only person I could cite about mainstreaming in Egypt, the only thing I could find written was written by you. So my entire master's is quoted by you. Okay? Just to embarrass you. Number two, I agree. Abroad they call it learning support assistant. And but again, we need to focus on individual differences. So, for example, in New Horizon, we mainstream 1 hour, then 2 hours, and 3 hours. This is the system. But when we see that there is a child who can spend the whole day, we do this. When we see that a shadow teacher can be pulled out and become a classroom assistant, we do this. So it is really very much an individual case scenario. Thank you.